All right, everyone. The nation of Canada wanted to tell Google, which is not a Canadian but a U.S. firm using its Supreme Court, that it had to block some search results on behalf of a Canadian business that was saying, well, our trademark is being breached by some of these like U.S. search results. And so Google, you need to cut it out. You need to basically delink all this stuff so nobody can find it. And Google's like, well, no, Section 230 and the First Amendment, and we can't actually do that. What you're telling us to do, we don't feel comfortable doing. And essentially, what this is billed as is global censorship. Now, this is a weird situation because Google is actually saying it doesn't want to censor its search results. It does, however, want to manipulate them on behalf of NGOs and on behalf of other, governments and firms. I'm not exactly sure why it would want to do one and not the other, though. I think it gets to the point, this may be a good thing in the future, because what may happen is that some of these big tech firms, Google, Facebook, whatever, it gets to the point where they start hemorrhaging money because of censorship. Like they're going to have to allocate more and more resources to doing the censoring in order to keep working with these NGOs and these Western European totalitarian governments. They're going to have to dedicate more time, more resources, and also it's going to cause them to take a PR hit every time they engage in this behavior. Censorship right now is in full swing of popularity among the progressives. However, I do not believe that it is still majority popular in the US or any other civilized part of the world. I think the idea of censorship it's something that people don't want to criticize because they're afraid of being labeled a Nazi at this point. At some point, though, they're going to stop being afraid of being called a Nazi and they're going to be more afraid of losing their ability to speak. This is what has happened in the past. Like you look at the McCarthy era or the Satanic Panic. Same thing. During the Satanic Panic, most people knew that the Wiccan next door was not worshiping the devil. If they knew anything about them personally, but they didn't want to actually openly defend them, because then it'd be like, well, you must be part of some cult too. You must be worshiping the devil too. McCarthyism, somebody is proclaimed a communist. Now, there were communists in the U.S. government, and there were communists in Hollywood. There still certainly are. As far as, though, Tom down the street being secretly a Red because he read Marx's manifesto once and didn't take to the streets immediately to spend 20 years of his life condemning communism and praising Uncle Sam. The fact is that most of those claims were never true. There was an extension of moral panics. The original panic is always, there's a kernel of truth there. There's a kernel of truth to the current moral panic. Yeah, there are white supremacists in the United States that operate. It's just like the right-wing sort of panic over Antifa and stuff. Yeah, those groups exist. Yes, they get violent. Yes, if they could create more violence, I'm sure that they would. Ultimately, though, that kernel is relatively small. The fact is that somebody who is saying, well, yeah, I think that we should have more welfare, that doesn't mean that they're an anarchist, and it doesn't make them a communist. Any more than someone saying, hey, well, yeah, I think we should defend the border and not, let anybody fucking into our country. Doesn't make them a Nazi. No, it means they have common sense, generally. So what we've got is a weird situation where these firms, over time, they're going to keep, the NGOs, you give them an inch, they're going to take a foot. They're going to pressure for more and more censorship. At some point, these companies are no longer going to be able to give them what they want. At that point, these NGOs and foreign governments will attempt to attack these companies, and they may find themselves having to fight back, which means they may end up working on behalf of the First Amendment. It's possible. We may already be seeing it with this Google case. Of course, this is over a trademark dispute. This isn't over, well, someone said something offensive online. But it's the principle. The same argument Google's using here to say, well, no, we're not going to censor this. Couldn't some private individual attempt to use this against Google as well and say, well, Google's saying it won't censor this, even though this is actually against some foreign law, but they're also saying that they're not going to bow down before foreign laws, so what gives here? And then you get into the whole, well, they're a private company, they can do what they want thing. Yeah, but what if the U.S. government? What if corporations here? What if the European governments or Canada or something try to use their legal systems to screw them online? To censor results, to prevent competition, to monopolize, basically, to screw us over, to screw our jobs and businesses over. What happens if they start lobbying the US government to declare them all public works? If that does happen, these foreign governments no longer have any say whatsoever on what goes on Google or Facebook or Twitter. Oh, it'd be wonderful. You wouldn't even really need alt tech, by the way, at that point. It would certainly still exist. There'd certainly still be people using various platforms. But as far as those declared public works, like above some threshold on some arbitrary measure of traffic or the type of use that goes on the site, like people primarily use it to communicate in some form or another. It's not just like an e-commerce site or something. It would prevent them from ever being meaningfully censored. The U.S. government probably would end up not being able to censor it either, assuming that you don't have like bureaucratic, like FCC involvement. If it stays just a strict, straightforward judicial thing, it would work really well, a de facto public service, a de facto public work, as opposed to one that's, well, the FCC is going to come in and make sure because this means because it's a public utility or a public service or publicly owned or what the fuck ever, and the government needs to make sure that like citizens who have moral concerns, their concerns will be addressed too. So you can't say damn it on YouTube anymore, something like that. Oddly enough, here we have a case where Google's essentially working for free speech. Good on them. They could have done the opposite. They could have said, yeah, we're going to scrub the search results. We don't fucking care on behalf of this Canadian business. What the tech firms should do, by the way, if they were paying attention to sanity and reason at all, what they would do is get together and simultaneously agree not to undergo any foreign censorship, to strictly be about free speech, because it makes them more money and endears them to the Western audience more. That's what they would do. The way to do that is to simply lord over your ultimate monopolistic hegemony over the Western European totalitarian states that inevitably are the arbiters of attempts to denigrate free speech. Just say, okay, you want us to censor content? Yeah, we'll censor it. We'll just block. Since we're not going to do that, we'll censor you from using our services. So that means Angela Merkel can no longer check her Facebook page. She can no longer tweet. She can no longer make a YouTube video. You won't be able to access these services. We're going to block your whole country from accessing them. And then I bet some millions or tens of millions of people who at this point have part of their income coming from the fact that they can actually be part of social media, I bet that they would begin to protest. I bet that a lot of the business owners, the productive classes would have a real problem with it. I bet that all of the young scholars and students would have a problem with it when they realize that they can't use Wikipedia anymore to do research. When they realize that they can't ask people questions on YouTube. When they realize they can't access that documentary they wanted to watch. When they realize that Amazon has shut them out and they can't buy the fucking book they need. I bet that those countries would fall in line real friggin' fast. That's what these tech firms should do. And you don't need many of them to agree to participate. You need like 7 or 8 firms tops. You know, you'd have Google, with sub-owned, of course, by Alphabet. You'd have Facebook, and, Zuckerberg, I think, also controls Instagram. So might as well fucking bundle that in, too. Just use all your services. I know Zuckerberg's the most pro-censorship of them all. Twitter, certainly Amazon, probably Microsoft and Apple and some of these other, actual computing groups. You deprive a country of those very small number of businesses, they no longer have e-commerce. They no longer have a functioning e-presence at all. The only ones that would be like maybe China or some place with an intranet. But they've looked at China's intranet, that's sluggish too. It doesn't, ultimately on a worldwide scale, China has basically Alibaba. And that's basically its contribution to the net world. That's it. That's fucking all that it has. Why? Because it's got an intranet. It's not connected. There's no reason for some entrepreneur in China to try to really branch out to the outside world. It's part of a selectively accessed intranet system. It wouldn't make any sense. Why would they want to, by the way? They got 1 billion people they can cater to in China that have internet access within China itself. In the Chinese language, easier for people there to use. Well, wonderful. Well, then you have your intranet. The worldwide net outside, though, is considerably larger. It spans more nations, it's in more languages, and it certainly does more brisk business. China is still second tier when it comes to this. People keep making up all these whack-ass predictions about how powerful China is going to get, and I keep chuckling at it. Because people said the same thing about Japan in the 1980s. oh, pretty soon they're going to own everything here. They're going to be our masters. I mean, the biggest economy. They're this. No, it's not going to happen. China, same thing. India is more likely to rise up to that threshold, honestly, because it's embracing more of a capitalistic model. They're more likely to outpace the Chinese and become the big two world economy. But you won't hear anyone else admit to the fact that they recognize that's going to happen for a good 10 years or so, I think, to come. So congrats to Google. You defended free speech. Although you need to do more. Get together with the other tech firms. Just browbeat the Western European governments and tell them you're not going to waste your time and money and resources on stupid shit that doesn't actually... You know that this is all moral panic. Like, these people who run these firms, they know full well that Russian propaganda is not influencing Western elections. They know this for a fact. They know that that's a propaganda tool. I don't know. Maybe Clinton paid him off to just go along with the argument. You know, here, Mark, here's $10 million bucks. And, you know, some foreign piece of tech that we stole, you know, smuggled through Haiti or something. Some CIA bullshit. That's probably what happened. That's about all. Peace out.